Yeah, I mean, I'm from Appalachia. I'm used to being poor, but I wouldn't mind my country being poorer if it meant we could be more racially pure and get rid of the outsiders.
I'd
I would
word it
be willing to
differently.
take an economic hit.
I'd word it
I think
differently,
that-
but I'd agree with the general
And I
principle.
think that's the big issue that
drive out the NWAs.
that libertarians have had an issue with. I think people are now being more honest that yes, libertarians are fundamentally right about the economy. The less you regulate the economy, and regulations include things like immigration, the better the economy will be. But people are now being more honest. The economy is not the only thing we care about. And I think that's why the right-wing coalition is coming together a bit more. Libertarians don't mind if you have different priorities, but libertarians do mind if you're disingenuous. If you say regulating the economy makes the economy stronger, libertarians kind of know you're lying. If you say regulating the economy makes the economy weaker, here's why we consider that a reasonable trade-off, libertarians, I think most libertarians are willing to compromise. Yeah. So I think part of the reason the right wing has become stronger is it's been more willing to be honest, and that honesty has that dealing in good faith has allowed libertarians to come back in. Because, like most people, libertarians don't like being lied to. They know that you don't make the economy stronger by regulating it, but here's something we care about besides the economy is a reasonable point for compromise.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think small correction, maybe not what you meant, but I think an economy with no regulation would be less strong than an economy with a reasonable low level of regulation. So there's a correct level, but it is lower than is normal in the world today. I think libertarians would agree with that. I think your average ANCAP would say none at all.
Oh, yes. I've talked to a few ANCAPs, but the main issue I have with ANCAPs is you do need some monopolies. For example, you can't have the right to the double jeopardy law. You can't have double jeopardy unless there is a monopoly on the court system. If you've got private courts, you could always just be prosecuted in a different private court. Double jeopardy requires a monopolistic court system. So there are.
And to have a monopolistic court system, you also have to have some kind of monopolistic structure that says what a court is and what is allowed in a court, and that exists outside of jurisdiction for law. So that sort of necessitates some kind of governing body, at least for that.
I would put this quite differently. The issue is not that there are some monopolies required, because ANCAPs would say that, oh, well, in that case, the people would just rise up and prevent someone from being tried more than once. The problem is that if you keep asking the ANCAP questions, you'll get to the point where they'll say people won't accept that. Okay, about 1/10 of those examples, people would actually not accept. In practice, they would rise up, but maybe not even that many. Not all by any means. And if there's any time that they don't, that is going to get worse. It's going to start to grow, and lots of people will be disadvantaged before anyone attends to it. People are not even if people do think it's unjust, they're not going to put the time in to rise up every 5 minutes some injustice happens. That's why you normalize this stuff not being allowed, and you have much, much lower energy input required to prevent it, which is just, you're not allowed to do that. And because the system is all founded on the eventual threat of force, they don't do it. The problem ANCAPs have is not with society, not with the government, not with all that structure. It's with the fact that it's overbearing sometimes. A society doesn't have to be overbearing. And if it wasn't ANCAPs, yeah, sure, they might still ideally argue for their utopia, but they would have nowhere near as strong a complaint.
And that's why you and I mostly agree on the basic fundaments of the kind of society we want to live in, because we agree on all of those core fundaments that you just shared.
There's also the externality of constant rebellion. When people say, we're not happy with this, and we're so not happy with this, we're going to fight against it, there is a negative externality. For example, the Chinese people, the people of Red China, Cathay, they have a reputation for being extremely compliant to government authority. But if you look through Chinese history, there have been famously many, many revolts against government authority, all of which were extremely bloody. In fact, they were so extremely bloody that I suspect the Han Chinese genotype has in some cases filtered out the rebellious instinct. Rebelling in ancient China was so violent, so brutal, that it essentially killed everyone who was prone to rebel, and they had no descendants.
And the Han are called the Jews of the Orient for a reason.
True. Triple
Now,
dice gets us decisive time
further-
victory. Yes, 10,000
No, I
would like
Chinese
to add
eaten.
in.
I don't think they are. They're allowed to eat pork.
Go ahead, Quattro. Sorry.
But something else I would like to add in, we saw with the scamdemic just how many people were willing to go along with whatever tyrannical edict that day happened, without even questioning it.
Yep.
And that to me has always been terrifying.
Yeah, there's also, I agree with Quattro, there's a human element too to why I don't think Ancap-istan is a reality, is because the vast majority of men, good men, smart men, don't want to be king. They don't want to be the absolute ruler and arbiter of every single thing and have to think about that and prepare for that all the time. Most men don't want to do that. And so that is why every system of government we have comes to be, is because there needs to be order, there needs to be leadership, and most people don't want to have to be bothered with that.
Mm-hmm.
And Ancap-istan requires an exceptionally high rate of constant preparedness, awareness, and involvement of the common man for it to have the kind of functionality that we are accustomed to and think would be good. Ergo, I don't think that it is within it. Well, at least my race. I don't know about other races, but I don't think it's in us yet, if ever, to have the wide sweeping majority of men who are willing to be that involved in whatever their Ancap-istan society is. Like, who's got time for that? I don't want to make time for that. Like, it's a full-time job just trying to find out what my lying-ass government and lying-ass media is trying to cover up, let alone having to care about, well, am I going to have to go fight this guy because he's going to try to turn off my power to make a buck? Am I going to have to, keep these guys from stealing my daughter to sell her to God knows who? Like, when you start really thinking about the human element required for a large-scale functional Ancap-istan, it all just kind of falls apart because of the human element.
It's the human element is just one way of saying essentially thermodynamics in action, because that's what it comes down to. Society is a way to increase, in some way, there's different ways you could word it, but increase complexity at the minimum energy cost. So almost everything that we do is trying to get a good result with the minimum energy cost. If every time you need to resolve an issue, you can just say, that's against the rules, you'll be banned or punished if you do that. And someone says, oh, right, so it is, I won't do that then. That's significantly lower energy than, all right, boys, get your level 4 plates and your self-height guns. We're going to the local courthouse because they're trying this guy we'd never heard of twice for the same crime. Yes, he was tried last year over in the town over yonder. So that's too much. Guns out, lads. 100 people marched down to the courthouse. This is wrong. Just the level of energy required for that by comparison is absurd. And the level of energy required to arbitrate who is correct in those situations. We've got an army approaching. Let's get our boys armed up and ready to defend ourselves from this unknown army that's all over some bullshit legal technicality. Obviously a very good one, but compared to the scale of the drama that's caused by it, that's Ancap-istan. That's what you get when you don't just allow the violence to be implicit and written on a piece of paper.
Right.
And also,
the only way that Ancap-istan could ever come to fruition is if we see a level of hyper-vigilance that humanity has never, ever before been able to muster. We're just suddenly
exactly
able to get that.
That's what I meant earlier.
It's insane as what the communists are after to me.
But you also run the risk of creating that dysgenic incentive. If you do this, as you say, everyone's got to arm up every time there's a conflict or disagreement. You risk creating an incentive where the best way to survive is to not protest injustice, because you've made the cost of protesting injustice so high, the energy requirement to do that is so high, you've potentially created a place where the optimal strategy is to accept a high level of injustice because the energy required to go against it is more than you'll benefit from getting rid of the injustice. That's going to breed compliance, because it will eliminate non-compliance from the gene pool.
That's one of my arguments against monarchy as well, that monarchy compared to democracy takes a lot more oppression before people are willing to do something about it, because you have to kill the king or something similar, rather than just put a different piece of paper in the ballot box.
You don't have to kill the king. One of the king's relatives has to kill the king. And the aesthetic is a lot better.
I will agree that the aesthetic is quite nice, but that's about as far as I go with monarchy. I like
again,
those rugs.
I don't
those
care.
like really
I don't
expensive
care if we
medieval
have a
king
king or
style
not.
rugs. I want one of those.
I don't care if we have a king or not. Like, I'm not here to stand for one particular government system. I just want whatever system we have to not be corrupt as fuck, and for the people in charge to actually give a damn about my ethnos. That's what I care about.